Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. Because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service and you're ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to Aleashabahr.com. This episode is with John T. Meyer.
There you go.
John T. Meyer is on a mission to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. John has spent 15 years learning leadership on the job by trying, making mistakes, and pushing himself and his teams to be better every day. Today, John is the Executive Director of Leadership, South Dakota, and coaches founders through his company, Lead More. In 2011, John co-founded Lemonly, a design firm that helps the world's best brands like Netflix, Marriott, Major League Baseball, and Google tell their story. As Lemonly's CEO, John built a strong company culture, gaining regional and national attention, and became one of the best places to work in the Midwest. John is married to his wife, Paige Pearson Meyer, and loves being a girl dad to Margot and Liv. He enjoys running, traveling, and finding the next big idea. And what I like most about John is that he did build one of those big old businesses and sold it. And he's here to talk about how if you don't want to build an empire, that's okay. And that shouldn't be the only goal in business, because there's kind of this condescension or looked down upon if you don't want to grow this big empire. And John is here after having done it himself, saying there's another way for the people who actually want to enjoy and live their lives. So I'm so excited to hear. Let's go. Welcome to the big show. Sales is Not a Dirty Word.
Thanks, Aleasha. Excited to be here. I loved your intro. So I was like, you know your stuff, because as I was hearing your sales intro, I was like, I could probably use that too. So good job.
Good. That's awesome to hear. That's what I'm going for. So when you started Lemonly and built it, is there something that happened in that experience that made you want to go this direction? Like, did you find you were sacrificing some things that were important to you in life?
Yeah, great question. Probably not, because I didn't know any different. Like, I was 25 years old and the business started a little bit accidentally. I became an entrepreneur at 23, where I got a grant through my home state of South Dakota. It was a $15,000 grant. And the two rules were that you had to build the business in South Dakota, because they were getting people to kind of talent to come back home to the state, because a lot of people were leaving. And it had to involve technology somehow. So at 23, I'm an entrepreneur, like no idea what I'm doing, trying to figure it out. And the lesson we learned from that first business was you got to be known for something. We were doing like digital marketing, social media, websites, focus group, whatever as long as it was legal and it was digital, like we would help you out. And that's not a good way to build a business. So the lesson we applied to Lemonly was let's be world class at one thing. And we became one of the best, if not the best in the world, at making infographics, like telling your story through visuals. And so it was very much like we often let our customers pull us into the market. We started very small and we kept raising our prices as people kept saying yes. That was my pricing strategy. Bigger customers, bigger clients, and all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but pretty quickly we have 20 employees and a few million in revenue, and it's building one of those bigger businesses. So it wasn't by design. I wish I could say I whiteboarded it all that way. But we kind of just kept pulling the thread and seeing where things went. And all the while doing that, this is in the backdrop of the early 2010s, where people are building apps and social media and venture capital. And there was this sense of building a services company or a lifestyle business was a bad thing, right? As you alluded to. And I just thought, I don't know, like I feel like I have my hands around my business. I know all the names of the people I get to work with. There are just a lot of ways to win. And there are a lot of different ways to build a business. And so ultimately, I decided to sell the company because I just knew I had another chapter to write and another way to do something new and to kind of share my gifts with the world.
Okay, so it was more like, ooh, I want a new challenge, rather than like, I feel like this is a lot of work that I don't necessarily want to do all the time.
I think there's a little bit of both. I wanted a new challenge. I felt like I'd sold thousands of infographics. Like, how many more do I need to sell? Right? I think we sort of were who we were. And maybe to steer the ship to your point about a bigger operation, to reinvent a 20-person company felt like a lot of work. Whereas I craved the early days, right? Where we're innovating and trying and testing and throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Um, so yeah, it was probably a little bit of both, to be honest. But I didn't know what I didn't set out to build exactly what it became. I loved what it became, but sometimes you don't know what it'll look like.
That story reminds me so much of Shoe Dog. Have you read that book?
Oh, I love that book. Yeah, that's such a good book.
It's such a good book. And for the listeners who haven't read, it is the story of Phil Knight, who started Nike. And he only goes up to the point where they were successful because that's the only point that was fun. And he's like, I really wish that I could go back to the early days when it was like, oh my God, are we gonna make payroll? Are we gonna be able to pay for our inventory? Like, who do we partner
Yeah.
with? How do we get this out there? And like so stressful in the time. I think it was a little different for Phil because he was like basically an absentee father. In the book, he's like, my wife basically raised the kids. So I love that you didn't have that experience with Lemonly.
No.
Um, because that's not
Well,
worth it for me. Like I will not do that for business.
and one thing, you talked about the trials and tribulations and the slog of building Nike. One thing I'll say is that doesn't go away. Like I've built two seven-figure agencies and exited both. Now I coach agency entrepreneurs and creatives, and it's still really hard. Now there are things that make it a little easier. Like my network is a little bit bigger. I've had a lot more. I have some scar tissue. I'm like battle tested, but also like I think it's building a business in 2025 is very different than it was in 2011. And so if you think it's just going to get easier, like if you're signing up for entrepreneurship, you're signing up for the trials and tribulations, regardless of the size.
Well, and apparently when you make it, you miss those trials and tribulations. So let's just
Yeah,
enjoy them while
right?
they're happening, I
Yeah.
guess, is the moral
Yeah,
there.
totally. The journey, right? Not the destination, because I think it's like there's no better test of sort of your determination or a better way to learn than running a business, right? Every day you wake up and it's like, okay, what are we going to learn today about myself, about the world, about other people? Constant lessons every single day.
It's like a slap in the face of like all your shortcomings. You're like, wow, I have some fears and doubts around this. This made me act a certain way. Like what's going on?
Yeah, it does put your whole self on display, I guess, to like you said. And thankfully, we live in a business environment we can hire to sort of cover up or outsource our weaknesses. Can't always do that, maybe to your point, as a husband, as a father, as a son, daughter, whatever your titles are. Um, but in the business context, yeah, you're on full display, especially if you're out in front.
Yeah. So there is definitely a lot of growth that comes from that experience, but not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
And I love that you're here with a message that's like, hey, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to, and you can still make good money.
Yes.
So I love like lifting people up who don't want an empire because they're out there. I know I don't want an empire. I think it sounds very stressful. We were just talking about Elon Musk's life and how it doesn't
Mm,
look like a good time. I'm
yep.
pretty sure he has to schedule like 5 minutes, like every minute of his schedule is
Yeah.
planned. And so what made you shift in this direction?
Yeah, I think one thing I thought about when I ran this 20-person creative agency, we were a design agency, and I'd look out at my team and think, man, I think they could probably make more money on their own. They're so crazy talented, and the business
Aw.
model of running an agency just doesn't allow, it's not, the margins aren't amazing, right? As the business
Yeah.
grows, so does your expenses. But then I also had to kind of flip the switch of realizing they don't want to do that. They don't want to pay tax, like have to like balance the book and do all the sales and hire and fire. But I have watched across the creative agency, a lot of these folks go out on their own because they are so good at what they do, their craft. And often what I see is they put their head down, they grind for 12 months and they grind and grind. And this might sound like someone listening, you sell a big project and you're like, great, January, awesome, booked for the month, lots of sales. do the project on the 28th of the month, you send the files off or you complete the project and then you realize, oh crap, I don't have any business in February. I got to go back to selling mode, right? And so what I want to help those people, so they grind for 12 months and then realize I'm working more and making less being an entrepreneur, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I believe, and that's why my coaching program is called No More Solo. I think the way through that slog is to grow and not be alone. But this also, like you said, doesn't mean an empire. You don't need a co-founder. You don't need a bunch of salaried employees and a $500,000 payroll. You can do it with collaborators, contractors, maybe hire a virtual assistant to free up your time and then grow through that. So you can start to get consistent 5-figure months of revenue and build a company and not a demanding job.
Yeah, I mean, there is a joke among entrepreneurs that like you quit your 40-hour a week job for an 80-hour a week job.
Yeah.
So it's very real. And I think that a lot of those hours are, to your point, like especially if it's a creative going into business, just agonizing over what you have to do to market and sell yourself. I don't think it's even doing stuff, it's just
Yeah.
fretting about how
Yeah.
you have to do the stuff.
I mean, I remember making, I like to do to-do lists and I'm a goal setter. But I remember finally realizing like, oh, I'm just going to go to bed every night with things left undone. And I have to be okay with that, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you could always, as you know, you could always make another sales call. You could always send another email, make another piece of content. And so to some degree, you have to just really laser in on what are the core things that move this business forward every day? Let's start with those and be okay with just not getting everything done.
Yeah, so some mindset shifts you found, it sounds like, are necessary for the people you work with. Like when they first work with you, are they like, ah, so overwhelmed?
Yeah, they're usually growing because they're so good at what they do. And in the services business, as you know, people want to work with folks they know, like, and trust. And so word of mouth, referrals, like that's a great way to get started. And you're starting to do 10, maybe 15, 20K a month. And then I come along and say, let's double that monthly revenue. And then while that sounds good to make money, you're thinking, no, there's no way. Like I won't sleep. I will never see my family again. I can't go from 20 to 40K. And the answer, of course, is to not go alone, but build the systems, constant marketing, repeatable sales, and then start to delegate so you can do the things you love and your team or your operation can build the business. So I think that's the first mind shift is like allowing yourself to grow. But as you said earlier, like knowing that we can build a business that fits our life and doesn't overtake our life.
Yeah, so what is the first step to somebody who wants to do that?
Yeah. So I think one of the hard parts is to accept that you have to always be marketing yourself and always creating content. In 2025, the way that you grow a business looks very different. In 2011, we got lucky because we were one of the first shops building infographics and became pretty known for that. So if you Google the word like infographic company, Lemonly's the first result. So a lot of our business development came to us through SEO, through search. That's
Mm.
so hard to do today. And then throw AI in the mix, and we don't know what search is going to look like in the future. So I
Right.
believe if you want to build a nice, profitable services business, you got to always create content and tell the world about who you are, what you know. That could be a podcast. It could be as simple as like, I always say, document the journey. You don't have to create the perfectly crafted content. You could grab your phone and create stories on Instagram, LinkedIn, and say, here's me building the business. Here's the behind the scenes. This is what it looks like. And if you hate camera, you hate hearing your voice on a podcast, maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's post on LinkedIn. But I think you do need to create content and put yourself out there so you can be found. That's the first step.
Okay. So, but a lot of these people already were being found, right? Because you said they're coming in doing 10K, 20K.
They're being found, but they have these sort of what I call like the revenue roller coaster. It's like they sell that 20K project and now they're booked
Mm,
for 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 weeks, but they're not doing the constant like backfill of building a pipeline of leads
mm.
and still doing sales calls, right? Like we want to take that sort of in demand feeling and create a little bit of scarcity with our leads and prospects. Like get in line, be the next customer, right? I'm going to raise my prices. I'm in demand. Or as you know, there's no better feeling than selling something and then having other people help do that work and create a little bit of profit margin, right? We're going to sell it for X, we're going to do it for Y. So I want the people I'm coaching to be in demand, have too many leads. As you probably also can vouch for as a salesperson, I just think sales kind of cures everything, right? It's like the locker room with two stars in the locker room on the basketball team. You got Shaq and Kobe, and they got big egos, and they just don't mesh. Well, when you're winning championships, you can kind of cover up for some of that. When we're getting sales, we can cover up
Mhm.
for some of those things and sometimes throw money at a problem or fix something with a contractor or a freelancer. So I think that's the big thing is constant marketing. Then we move into sales, and it's making your sales more repeatable because I see a lot of these creative solopreneurs, they're building new proposals from scratch. They're
Mm.
doing changing their prices each time, making a custom proposal that looks like this for you and then looks a little bit different for me. And now I don't even remember which one I sent to who or what I said on that phone call, what the price was. That happens a lot.
Oh
Um,
God.
and so building repeatable sales process, or even like I even call it like the product ladder, right? You're not just a videographer or a graphic designer. There are probably other things in your stack that you can add value and help your customers. Or maybe it's after you deliver your service, there's add-ons or follow-on services, stacking up your ladder to have a nice, attractive menu to the leads and prospects that you have.
Mm. Okay. So marketing and sales, what if the people are like, but that's just adding more to my plate? I have to do more
Mhm.
marketing and more sales. This sounds like I have to do more.
Yes. And so then the third kind of ladder of my triangle there is delivery. That's, doing the thing you said you would do to for your customer, promising it on time, on budget, all the things included. And so the first one I recommend there is just making sure you get your hands around your business and building a scorecard that reflects the flow of your business. What are your marketing activities, your sales, how many revenue that you sold that month? And then did you actually make money? Because what I found, and I was this way as a young entrepreneur, if we made more money than we spent, that was a win. And we kind of went on to the next month. We didn't really dive into why was that client more profitable? Why was that project more
Mm.
efficient? So getting your hands around the business is a simple scorecard. It doesn't have to be complicated, but knowing your numbers. And then we can start to work in our sort of zone of genius. And that's usually by delegating. And one of the fastest ways to get some relief in that process, I believe, is to hire an assistant. Could be a VA, could be an EA, depending on what you want to do. But essentially, it's like cloning yourself. If you believe you're the right person to build this business, we want to expand the amount of hours and buy back your time each week. And that's one of the ways to do it. So kind of have to fall in love with marketing and sales, but get some relief on sending invoices, managing your calendar, doing your inbox, some of those blocking and tackling tasks that every business requires.
Okay. And how do you have like a process for bringing on a VA? Because I know people who have
Mm,
tried and it's
yeah.
like not worked out.
Yeah. It takes a little time and investment in the upfront. You have because a lot of us think in a way where I would say, okay, Aleasha, I could teach you that. If I teach you this, it might take me 20, 30 minutes. For me to actually do it takes me 2 minutes. Like, why would I?
Right.
It's like, well, how many times, John, do you do that? Well, every day, maybe twice a day. Okay, so let's think about how many times those 2 minutes add up. So a couple things I'd recommend. One is the camcorder method, and that's just recording you doing the things. So big fan of the tool loom.com. You can
Me
do this for
too.
free. And then if you do pay, I recommend the AI. If you add on the paid plan, the AI will actually build an SOP for you.
Oh.
So I recommend doing what I call the me, we, you plan. So if I'm hiring a virtual assistant or, a sales person, whatever it might be, hey, I'm going to do it first and you watch me. The second time we are going to do it together, kind of sidecar. And then the third time you're going to do it and I'll watch you. And by the time
Hmm.
you've gotten through that task or process 3 times, they should have a good sense. But you've also recorded it on Loom. So if I forget that step, I can go back and watch it again or turn the Loom video into an SOP. So that's a big one is just the camcorder method. The other one I really recommend, I do a daily stand up with my VA. And after that
Mm.
15 minutes, then we're off and I don't talk to her again. But we do a couple things. We look at today's calendar, what's coming up, what do I need to know about? Okay, I got a podcast with Aleasha. How do I need to prep for that? Any follow ups from yesterday's calendar. So I did that coaching call and I said that I would send these 2 links to my customer, Ray, and then follow up and book next month's meeting. So she's got a process to follow that. So today's calendar, yesterday's calendar. Then we do my to-dos, we do your to-dos, and then any questions. So she might say, "Hey, there's this email in your inbox from George. Like, what? How should I respond to that one?" And every time we do that, we're actually recording like that email template and documenting that into our CEO playbook. And that's just a real fancy word for a big ass Google Doc of like email responses, processes, so that she has a game plan and a playbook for when those come back in again. And that 15-minute call, like I bet that gets me 2 to 3 hours back every day.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say like a 40-hour VA is going to immediately get you 40 hours back, but I typically find I get probably 20 to 25 hours back a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's significant. You can do a lot more with that. And then at that point, you can scale your income and you're happy, but you're not like an empire trying to take over the world.
Yeah, exactly. You build it to what you want to do. And she knows that I'm going to have an hour on my calendar every day to work out, and that's blocked. I create kind of my ideal day. And I themed my days. So a Monday is like a team day, and a Tuesday try to do my sales calls, and Wednesday I create content. And so she knows when in requests come in, what days to drop them in. And because, yeah, I also value my health, and I always pick up my girls at 4 o'clock to take them to swim practice. And, so those are things you can design the business to fit your life and not the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many random days that are off for school. I'm like, I don't know how regular parents are doing it. Like, what do they tell their bosses?
Yeah, my wife is also, she's got a busy corporate job. We're both, invested in our careers, but obviously invested in our family. I don't know if we didn't have one person with flexibility, that's me in this case as my own boss. I don't know. It's so hard. Yeah. Or you have to have
It's,
grandparents, right?
yeah, it's so hard. So I hope that this makes anyone listening feel like it's possible to have a successful business without sacrificing your sanity, your life, your hours, and that it's okay. I hope you feel empowered that this is a good thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, it
100%.
doesn't, yeah.
And I think I wouldn't limit, doesn't mean you have to like put a lid on what you can become. Because I know people running 7-figure businesses doing exactly what we're talking about. I'm about halfway there, not there yet, but that's the goal. So you can the upside is huge. I always say like being an entrepreneur can give you a lot of financial freedom, but we are probably, if we truly look in the mirror, we're probably doing it for the freedom, the time freedom, like the life freedom,
Hmm.
right? So don't forget about that. But also don't hold yourself back. Don't limit what it can become. It maybe doesn't happen overnight. Maybe it takes some time, um, but make it in a way where I always thought with that Lemonly, it's like, I love that when Sunday nights came along, I was like excited to go to work the next morning. Like I was
Mm.
ready. And then when I became a dad, I remember thinking, man, being a CEO is easier than being a dad. Because when I go into the office, I can control a lot more things. Now I have this young little girl and I have no idea what's coming next. That's part of the game too. Everything that's hard in life is usually worth it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely going to work, like when it used to be just the woman stayed at home and did everything in the house and the guy went to the job, that was definitely the easier gig because you can take a break. Like
Yeah.
there are no breaks as a parent. You're sick, you're taking care of your kids sick. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty nuts. So I would agree that as the CEO, it feels like
And one thing
not
that's
as
pretty
hard.
amazing, I just heard it was this daily podcast, the New York Times. Um, they specifically called out women, but I also have heard that working dads, this is true too, but working women today in 2020s spend more time with their kids than stay-at-home moms did 30 years ago.
No way. That's a
And
shocking stat.
mathematically, I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, where did those hours go? But we had other things like daycare drop-offs or practices, or I don't know, babysitters, nannies, whatever it might have been. But yeah, they said that working moms, we just culturally, I think, value time with our kids more often, and probably actually feel the pressure to make sure we're getting that time too. But at least as a society, I think moms and dads are burning the candle on both ends and doing a great job.
Oh, yeah. Dads these days are bringing it. Like kids didn't have dads like this before.
Yeah,
And it
I agree.
makes a yeah, it makes such a difference having both parents really engage with their kids. And I mean, if you don't have kids, then you got time to hustle. Like I told my husband, look, when it's just me and you, I'm gonna be with you for the rest of my life. I don't, I'll hustle or whatever. But like my kids are only young for such a limited
True.
period of time.
And then what you're tapping into there is, to me, the reason why going for it, why jumping out of the gig and going for that solopreneur gig or creating that entrepreneur company, that's the carrot. That's why it's worth it to me. And if I can help you do so in a way that's not so stressful and that you can build the business you want, but also gives you that upside chance of where it can go. Because again, as we talked about earlier, not only can you make money, but you will learn so much about yourself so quickly. And you'll look back at the person you used to be and be like, oh my gosh, allow me to reintroduce myself, because I'm a new person, right? I'm not the same person I used to be. And I think that's ultimately all of our mission in life is to become the best version of ourselves and then share that with the world, right? That's why we're here on this planet. So,
I mean, hopefully, like I think it's a pretty bleak plan to just work at a job you don't like the majority of your life so that you cannot spend money and save it for like
yeah.
maybe 10 good years at the
Yeah.
end. It's like that doesn't feel right. Something's
Yeah.
off.
Unfortunately, I think the story we were all told is a little bit of a myth, but
Yeah. I'd rather like enjoy it now. So I love that you're offering a framework and a structure for people to do that. And so that's a good stopping point for us. And we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. Thanks again to John for making an appearance as our guest today. And can you tell everyone how they can find out more about you and how they can work with you?
yeah, you bet. I'd love to. The best place, if you want more of these ideas, or as I dive deeper into those frameworks, just to follow me on social media. So, John T. Meyer is my handle, both on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can search me there. And then the program, No More Solo, it's a 10-week cohort-based program. So I put 7 to 10 solopreneurs together, and we do a weekly call with some office hours and support. The next cohort's going to launch January 14th in 25. So if you want to
Mm,
get the year running hard, otherwise we'll do that about 3 times a year. And you can go to johntmeyer.com, my website, to find details about that.
amazing. All right, John. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for listening. And until next time.
Thanks, Aleasha.